Africa, the mystical land of our imagination, has changed. Towns and farmland have replaced iconic landscapes. Fishing has depleted coastal waters. Nature is under pressure. And we are paying a price. Farming and fishing are no longer economically sustainable. So one area in South Africa is investing heavily in ecotourism and conservation as an alternative, reclaiming farmlands and closing fishing grounds for wildlife. This is one of the most exciting conservation success stories in Africa, the return of this great continent to the wild. It's late summer in Addo Elephant National Park in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. The park's flourishing ecosystems thrive with vibrant populations of many flagship species, including elephants, with which the park is synonymous. This is South Africa's third largest national park, stretching over 1,500 square kilometers and encompassing a range of habitats. From spiny thickets and arid mountains to the productive oceans offshore. Addo's habitat diversity stems from both its size and location in the Eastern Cape. The entire Southern African region is renowned for its landscape diversity. But nowhere is this more apparent than in this province. Here, all 6 of South Africa's major ecosystems converge. The majestic Drakensberg Mountains stand over densely forested valleys. And wide-open grasslands roll into the species-rich heathland called the fynbos. A vibrant coastline full of life gives way to the desolate plains of the Great Karoo, all within the borders of the Eastern Cape. Tragically, in many parts of South Africa, natural wonders are under pressure. The oceans are overfished. And on land, much of the region is heavily populated and has been farmed throughout recorded history. During the 1800s, European settlers carved small homesteads out of the Eastern Cape's impenetrable thickets and created open fields for crops and livestock. Hunters in search of meat and trophies decimated the province's bountiful wildlife. Farmers shot predators on sight, considering them vermin. By the early 1900s, the Africa of our imagination had gone. But this new face of Southern Africa couldn't last long. Little by little, over the last 100 years, the pendulum has begun to swing back. The unpredictable weather is making traditional farming unprofitable. In its place, conservation programs are taking root. And many farmers are converting their land to private game reserves so they can reap the rewards of tourism. One of the biggest landowners taking the lead in reclaiming land for wildlife is the South African government itself, which has created a network of national parks. A large herd of elephants is cooling off at one of Addo Elephant National Park's waterholes. Under the watchful eyes of the adults, youngsters play in the muddy water. Elephants haven't always had such a carefree existence here. During the 1900s, 99% were slaughtered for their ivory, leaving only 11 elephants remaining in the Eastern Cape. This prompted the government to create the Addo Elephant National Park. Protected from hunting, the small elephant herd had a chance to bounce back. To bolster genetic diversity, bulls were introduced from other parks. Today, Addo stands out as a conservation success story. Its borders have expanded to accommodate the growing elephant population. And this not only benefits elephants, but a wide range of plants and animals that have been reintroduced to the Eastern Cape. The park even extends into the surrounding oceans. So it also protects one of the planet's most endangered seabirds. African penguins. Most of these live here on Bird Island, within the borders of the Addo National Park. A small flotilla is returning from a successful fishing expedition. Like elephants, their populations are severely depleted. Once numbering into the millions, now as few as 50,000 birds remain. This rocky outcrop is home to the largest remaining population anywhere on the continent. Historically, African penguins were exploited almost to extinction. Their island homes devastated by humans. During the 1800s, the world discovered that seabird droppings, also called guano, made excellent fertilizer. Fleets sailed from Europe in search of this white gold. They discovered large deposits on the islands surrounding southern Africa, with devastating consequences for the penguins. Penguins burrow into guano to make their nests. Guano is a stable substrate, and the resulting burrows protect the adult birds and their chicks from the elements. By stripping guano from the island, humans destroyed the penguins' natural nesting habitats. Consequently, populations collapsed. To make matters worse, penguin eggs were considered a delicacy, and millions of them were collected for the tables of Europe. Guano miners and passing ship crews also discovered that penguins' fatty bodies and oily feathers burned better than damp coastal wood, so they burned the birds for fuel. Little wonder the penguins were heading for extinction. Today, the island and its inhabitants are protected. Conservationists are fighting hard to save the species. They provide artificial concrete shelters for nests. These protect the birds from the elements. For now, population numbers are stable, but concerns remain for the future of one of the most charismatic characters of the African coastline. The growing success and popularity of Addo as a tourist attraction has had an unexpected result. It's inspired surrounding landowners to consider alternative options for their land. This is Shamwari Private Game Reserve, 30 kilometers east of Addo Elephant Park. 20-odd years ago, the owners purchased a small 1,200-hectare farm and converted it to this wildlife reserve. This proved successful. Wildlife rebounded and ecotourism flourished. Since then, this small reserve has expanded to more than 25,000 hectares. As it's grown, Shamwari has successfully reintroduced many species long absent from the Eastern Cape. It's now one of the most successful game reserves in South Africa and is a profitable tourist attraction. One factor driving this success is that this is one of the only areas in Africa where you can view wildlife without being at risk of malaria. This makes it popular with international tourists, who flock to the region. Converting traditional farms to wildlife reserves isn't without its difficulties. "50 kilometers to the east of Shamwari is Karlsrust Farm. Although this looks like a conventional farm, it's actually one of the latest conservation projects in the region. New owners recently bought the farm and are converting it to a private wildlife reserve. Livestock now share their pastures with bontebok and other antelope. As the native wild herds grow, cattle, pigs and sheep will be phased out. And new game-proof fences will replace old farm boundaries. Returning the land to its native state is about more than just wildlife. The owners are removing trees like these Australian blue gums. They're considered invasive aliens in southern Africa. Aliens can outcompete local vegetation and also take lots of water, yet do little to support local wildlife. And many have chemicals in their leaves that poison the soil when they fall. So for the reserves to return to the wild, even majestic trees like these have to go. Reintroducing wildlife is expensive, and generally landowners can't afford to purchase large herds of animals such as eland and waterbuck. So they choose to introduce small founder populations, which, given time, can grow into larger herds. Small antelopes such as impala are a popular first purchase and quickly gain a foothold. And the future rests on the reproductive success of these individuals. Along with antelope, common species such as zebra are also introduced early. These are one of the most adaptable grazers and can eat almost any type of vegetation. And with few competitors, there's plenty here for this pregnant mare. Not only is she suckling her yearling, but she must also provide for her unborn foal. The yearling will soon be weaned, giving his mother time and resources to concentrate on her new arrival. Another mother is feeding alongside her family. Warthogs are tough characters and are one of a handful of wild species that survived the agricultural onslaught. But their habit of raiding crops did not endear them to farmers, who shot them on sight. As protected areas grow, so do their numbers. The piglets are almost 6 months old and are now ready to be weaned. They're already becoming accustomed to a varied diet, grazing on the dry grass and snuffling for underground tubers on their calloused knees. A hefty boar follows close behind. He's drawn to the piglet's mum because she's in estrus. Ordinarily, males wander alone or in small bachelor groups. With her baby's dependence on her drawing to a close, she's ready to mate again. The success of species such as zebra and warthog is key to the next phase of converting farms back to the wild. The aim of most game reserves is to reintroduce the all-important Big Five: lion, leopard, elephant, rhino, and buffalo. These are the gold standard when it comes to wildlife experiences for tourists. Tourism is one of the fastest growing businesses in South Africa. And the country's most important draw card is its wildlife. In this, conservation and tourism operate hand in hand. The success of one drives the success of the other. But all of these species are challenging for landowners. For the Big Five, the biggest requirement is space. The area of land available is one of the most important considerations in determining whether carnivores such as lions and leopards can survive naturally. This is equally true for the mega herbivores. In large government reserves such as Addo, elephant populations have proliferated. The reintroduction and success of one species such as this can have knock-on effects for many others. Elephants alter their surrounding habitat more than any other mammal, apart from humans. And many plants and animals here are benefiting from their presence. A leopard tortoise is one unlikely recipient. He's searching for juicy succulents, but these are often hard to access when they're covered in dense, spiny thicket. So elephants crashing through the vegetation create open spaces for him, allowing him to access previously inaccessible morsels of his favorite food. Even trees upended by elephants serve a purpose. They form handy scratching posts, especially good for those hard-to-reach places. Elephants don't only alter the physical environment, they also leave a bountiful food source behind them. And Addo flightless dung beetles take full advantage of the buffet on offer. This is one of the world's rarest dung beetle species, and another flagship species of this reserve. But Addo is relatively dry, unlike the moist savannas where most other dung beetle species thrive. And so to survive here, these beetles have traded the ability to fly for an onboard air conditioner. They've evolved so that where their wings used to be, there's an empty wing case. This open space draws heat away from the body, keeping the black beetles cool. By returning Addo to the wild and protecting magnificent animals such as elephants, even the smallest and rarest of creatures can flourish. They have sufficient food, and even vehicles now give them the right of way. Like elephants, carnivores need large areas in order to survive in the wild. Some, like cheetahs, can have home ranges of up to 1,000 square kilometers. In large reserves like Addo and Shamwari, cheetahs and other predators roam the thickets of the Eastern Cape. These reserves are big enough and have established sufficient populations of prey to sustain the carnivores. But many reserves are still in the process of converting their land back to wilderness and are too small for predators to roam free. One such reserve is Sibuya Private Game Reserve, 120 kilometers east of Addo. Here, managers have been forced to make a difficult compromise. Even though herbivores are doing well here, Sibuya isn't big enough yet for large predators to thrive and hunt for themselves. So they've introduced lions into a 75-hectare fenced area where they can be fed. This isn't ideal, but lions are important tourist attractions. While visitors revel in the natural scenery of this reserve, the animals are the principal drawcard, and tourism is key to funding the reserve. So for now, the cats have to be content with the easy meals that seemingly drop from the sky, and look to the future when Shibuya is able to purchase more land, allowing the lions to roam free once more. While the lions remain behind their fences, many other species thrive in their safe surroundings. The reserve was naturally covered in thickets and dense vegetation until farming replaced this with open paddocks of grass. No longer farmed, these open grassy fields provide new habitats. Species such as this black-headed heron are now common here. He's feeding on reptiles and frogs in the grass and wouldn't have inhabited the natural spiny thickets. He shares the reserve with a close relative, the grey heron. Both species can live in close proximity as they exploit very different aspects of a particular habitat. While black-headed herons stick to the fields, grey herons patrol the Karicha River. Frogs and reptiles are also on their menu, but their most important prey are fish. While these heron species don't compete directly, there's competition between individuals of the same species, fighting to claim their own stretch of the river. Away from the river, two Nyala bulls are showing off. They circle one another like heavyweight boxers. It's mating season, and this is a dance for dominance. They puff out their coats, making slow, accentuated movements. Their carefully choreographed moves have evolved to show off their form and allow them to size each other up without having to resort to physical combat. The loser soon retreats. He'll have to find another territory. The winner gains the chance to mate. While the Nyala males negotiate their dominance, other antelope have already established theirs. And this dominant territorial male Bontebok has got procreation in mind. It's a busy time, chasing females that stray too far, and keeping other male suitors at bay. While many species can thrive within a protected reserve, the threat of poaching looms from the outside. white rhinos in particular are currently facing unprecedented levels of attack. They only give birth to one calf every 2.5 to 5 years. So every new arrival is cherished and of vital importance to the survival of this endangered species. But even protective 2-ton mothers are powerless in the face of ruthless poachers armed with automatic weapons. Myths of rhino horn's curative powers have been around for centuries. Then, in 2008, a rumor started circulating that rhino horn cured cancer. And poaching incidents exploded. In reality, rhino horn is made of nothing more than keratin, the same protein that comprises human fingernails and hair. It has absolutely no health benefits whatsoever. The more visitors that travel to protected reserves, the more resources these will have to actively fight off the scourge of poaching. But in 2014, a rhino was killed every 8 hours. So, as more of the Eastern Cape returns to the wild, there's more protection for species such as rhinos, but their future still hangs in the balance. While animals are often the main focus of conservation initiatives, preserving unique landscapes is also important. 100 kilometers inland towards the arid plains of the Great Karoo semi-desert lies Kamdiboo National Park. These rock formations were created millions of years ago. The pillars of dolerite have been eroded by wind and water, resulting in the dramatic formations seen today. These striking features are unique, and hence their inclusion in the National Park network. In the dry Karoo plains at the mountain's feet, a number of arid-adapted animals also benefit from the park. Ostriches strut across the dry landscape. And herds of springbok pick their way through the vegetation. A crowned lapwing is defending her nest. She's got eggs to protect. She warns off the approaching wildebeest. If the warning isn't heeded, she'll take to the air and mob the intruder. For now, the danger passes, and she returns to her long vigil. Conservationists have ambitious plans for Kamdaboo National Park. They want to link this park to other parks in the region in order to establish a mega conservation area, roughly 5,200 square kilometers in size. As many areas across the Eastern Cape turn to conservation, the process is not without its difficulties. Private landowners are relatively free to convert their farms in any way they choose. And often, the demand for a good tourist attraction trumps pure conservation goals. Tourists look forward to seeing charismatic African species, such as giraffes. But they don't belong in the Eastern Cape. Despite this, more than 60% of new reserves, including Pumba Private Game Reserve 50 kilometers northwest of Sibuya, have introduced giraffes due to their popularity. Ecologists believe that species that do not naturally occur or would not have occurred naturally in the area should not be introduced. The natural vegetation isn't evolved to deal with their browsing patterns, and it's thought that giraffes may alter the natural balance of the flora over time. While this debate rages, the giraffes seem relatively comfortable in their newfound homes. Pumba features another animal that doesn't belong in the Eastern Cape. White lion. Here there are several lions with this genetic anomaly. Their coloration is caused by a mutation called leucism. This reduces the animal's pigmentation, but it's not completely absent, like an albino. The gene for leucism is not dominant, so this coloration is rare in purely natural populations. Also, in the wild, being white is a distinct disadvantage because it makes the lions more visible to their prey. So white lions don't survive well. But they're attractive to tourists, so this genetic rarity is preserved here at Pumba. And it remains for conservationists and private game farm owners to weigh the needs and desires of tourists with strategic, pure conservation goals. Luckily, although private reserves are motivated by tourism dollars, for the most part, the reintroductions have benefits all round. As farms turn to wild ecosystems, the land begins to operate more normally. Food webs return, and ecological processes function more naturally, linking the big animals to the small. Just as dung beetles rely on elephants, cattle egrets rely on buffalo herds. Here at Sibuya Private Game Reserve, the egrets shadow the buffalo wherever they go. These birds will often pick ticks from large herbivores as they move through the landscape. There are other benefits in staying close to these large bovines. The buffaloes stir up insects in the grass, and egrets foraging alongside them catch almost 50% more food than those that go it alone. Ticks produce eternal strife for buffaloes and often carry disease. To help control their infestations, the buffalo do more than rely on the egrets. They roll in the mud. As the mud dries, the buffaloes scrape themselves down, which helps remove parasites. And this isn't the only thing mud is good for. Oddly enough, the mud's good eating too. Many species eat mud. It's thought this helps with digestion and also provides additional nutrients missing from their diet. For animals to be successful, all parts of their natural ecosystem need to be preserved, from healthy vegetation right down to the mud beneath their feet. While some parks actively market the Big Five, coastal reserves like Addo have taken this concept one step further. In the protected waters surrounding Bird Island, humpback and southern right whales are also benefiting from the fishing ban. Southern right whales return here every year to breed. Humpbacks pass through these food-rich waters as they migrate across the oceans. So now the region proudly boasts a new concept, the Big Six, including these ocean wonders among their wildlife royalty. South Africa's Eastern Cape is changing. It is a province at the forefront of a growing conservation movement. The early success of Addo Elephant National Park inspired the creation of the private Shamwari Game Reserve. In turn, Shamwari's pioneering approach to returning farmland back to the wild has inspired many other landowners to follow suit. And tourism brings money. This creates job opportunities in a province where 60% of the population survive on less than $5 a day. Importantly, the private protected reserves of the Eastern Cape are showing that people and nature can live side by side. From the high mountains of the Drakensberg to the bustling thickets of the coastal river valleys, wildlife is coming back. The future of the native fauna seems more secure, and the hopes and dreams of its people are changing. Game reserves provide new economic opportunities and demonstrate that, together, humans and wildlife can navigate the future to everyone's benefit as this province returns to the wild.